The reactions of the powers. Because of this, they became afraid and collapsed, for they could not bear the shock of the light that came upon them. The revelation was a blow to both of the two orders. Those who belong to the remembrance, however, who have been named small since they have a small idea that something higher existed before them, had sown in them an anticipation that what was higher would reveal itself. For that reason, they greeted his revelation and bowed down before him. They became convinced witnesses for him and acknowledged that the light that had appeared was stronger than their opponents. Those who belonged to the imitation, however, were exceedingly frightened, for they had never before heard talk that such a sight could exist. Therefore, they fell down into that pit of ignorance called the outer darkness, chaos, Hades, and the abyss. He placed them below the order of those who belonged to the remembrance, since it had been shown to be stronger than they. So those were found worthy of becoming rulers over the unspeakable darkness as their own property, and the lot that fell to them. This is what he granted them, so that they too might become useful for the economy that was to be, and of which they were oblivious. Thus, there is a great difference between the revelation to the one who had come into existence and then had become deficient, and the revelation to those who came into being because of him. For to him he revealed himself inside him, being together with him, sharing his suffering, relieving him little by little, making him grow, raising him up, and finally giving himself to him to be enjoyed in a vision. To those who were on the outside, however, he revealed himself in a leap and a blow, and then withdrew immediately without letting them see. The word gives thanks and brings forth a third order of powers. After the Word who had become deficient was illuminated, his fullness came to be. He freed himself from those who previously had been revolting against him, became disentangled from them, and stripped himself of his former presumptuous thought. He acquired the unification of rest, as those who had been disobedient to him once before bowed down and succumbed to him. Moreover, he rejoiced in the visitation of his brothers who had come to visit him. He gave glory and praise to those who had revealed themselves to him to give help, giving thanks that he had become free from those who had rebelled against him, and admiring and praising the greatness and those who had resolved to reveal themselves to him. He brought forth living images of the living figures, being handsome and good, since they derived from those who exist. They resemble these in beauty, though they are not truly equal with them, since they had not issued from a union between him who had brought them forth and the one who had revealed himself to him. Nevertheless, he worked with wisdom and understanding, uniting himself completely with the word given to him. Therefore, what issued from him was great, just as that which exists is truly great. Having admired the beauty of those who had revealed themselves to him, he acknowledged then his thanks for their visitation. The Word effected this work by means of the ones from whom he had obtained help, in order that those who had come into being from him should be set aright and might receive something good, as he decided to pray that the fixed economy might attain all those who had gone forth from him. As a result, those whom he brought forth in accordance with his intention occupy chariots, in the same way as the existing ones who had revealed themselves, so that they may traverse all regions of activities lying below, and each one may obtain his fixed place in accordance with what he is. This was a defeat for those who belonged to the imitation. But for those who belonged to the remembrance, it was an act of beneficence. And it was a revelation of the things that arose from the unitary and compassionate decision of the aeons, even if they are only seeds that have not yet come into being for themselves. For that which was manifested was a countenance of the Father, and the concord. It was a garment composed of every grace, and food consisting of the things the Word had brought forth when he prayed, and it received the glory and the praise he had performed with his eyes fixed on the ones to whom he prayed, so as to make perfect by means of them the images he brought forth. For the Word greatly increased mutual cooperation and expectant hope, and they experienced happiness, deep rest, and the undefiled pleasures, the things that he at first had only remembered, when they were not before him in their perfection. He now brought forth with an object of vision before him. It is revealed to him, but remaining in the hope and the faith of the Father, the completely perfect one, he has not yet been united with it, for fear that the ones who have come into being might perish from looking at the light, since they cannot sustain a greatness of such supreme magnitude. The aeon of the images. Now, this thought of the Word, when he turned toward his consolidation and became master over those who had come into being because of him, was called aeon and place. For all those he brought into being in accordance with the decision of the aeons. Further, it is called assembly of salvation, for it healed him from the dispersion, which is the multiform thought, and turned him toward the single thought. Similarly, it is called storehouse, because of the rest he retained and gave himself. Moreover, it is called bride, because of his joy over what was given to him, in the hope of the fruit that would issue from the union revealed to him. It is also called kingdom, because of the consolidation he obtained when he rejoiced in his power over those who opposed him. And it is called the joy of the Lord, because of the delight with which he clothed himself when the light was before him, giving him recompense for the good that was in him and the thought of freedom. This aeon we here have been talking about is above the two orders of those who are fighting against one another. It shares nothing with those who hold dominion, nor is it implicated in the sickness and the weaknesses belonging to the remembrance or to the imitation. For that in which the Word established himself, filled with joy, was an aeon. It had the form of one, but it also had the constitution of its cause, which is what had been revealed, since it was an image of those who exist in the fullness and who had come into being out of the abundant delight of the one who is. In his joy, however, at the countenance of the one who had revealed himself, in his pleasure, his expectation, and the promise he had received of the things he had begged for, he possessed the word of the Son, together with his essence, his power, and his form. He was the one he desired and delighted in. He was the one who had been prayed for in love. This aeon was light and a desire to be set aright, an openness for instruction, and an eye designed for vision, qualities that it had from those above. Moreover, it was wisdom for his thought against the ones who were placed lower in the economy, a word for speech, and other perfect things of this kind. The individual members of this aeon. Those, moreover, who had been formed together with him after the image of the fullness, have as their parents the ones who had revealed themselves, each one of them being a small impress of one of the figures, being male forms, since they have not originated from the sickness, which is femaleness, but from one who has already left the sickness behind. They possess the name church, for harmoniously they resemble the harmony that reigns in the assembly of those who manifested themselves. That, in fact, which came into being after the image of the light is perfect itself, since it is an image of the single light that is, and that is the members of the all. Even if it was smaller than that of which it was an image, it nevertheless possesses its indivisibility because it is a countenance of the indivisible light. Those, however, who had come into being after the image of each one of the aeons are, in essence, that which we have said. But in their operation, they are not equal to the aeons, because it occurs in each of them separately. When they are united with one another, they have equality. But as individuals, they have not discarded what is proper to each. For that reason, they are passions, and passion is a form of sickness. For they are not offspring from the unity of the fullness, but from one who has not yet attained the Father, or the unity with the members of the all and his will. Nevertheless, it was a good thing for the economy that was to be, because it had been decided concerning them that they should pass through the lower stations, and the stations would not be able to accept them coming quickly through them unless they came one by one. And their coming was necessary because everything was to be fulfilled through them. The mandate of the word in the economy. In short, then, at once the word received all things, pre-existent, present, and future, having been entrusted with the economy of all that exists. Some were already realities, since their coming into being had been useful. Seeds that would come into being in the future, however, he kept within himself. Seeds deriving from the promise by which he had conceived, because it was a promise consisting of seeds of the future. And he gave birth to his offspring, which was the manifestation of that which he conceived. The seeds of the promise, however, were withheld for some time from coming into being, because they were such as had been appointed to be sent out at the advent of the Savior and his companions. It is they who are the first, for the knowledge and the glory of the Father. It is necessary because of the prayer he made and the conversion that took place as a result, that some shall perish, others benefit, and others still be set apart. He prepared the punishment for those who had been disobedient, making use of the power of the one who was revealed and from whom he had received the authority over all things. In this way he set himself apart from the things below, and also situated himself at a distance from what is superior, and so he prepared the economy of everything that is on the outside, and accorded to each his appropriate region. The spiritual level. Arranging all things, the Word first set himself up as origin, cause, and ruler of the things that had come into being, after the model of the Father, who was the cause of the pre-existent establishment. Thereafter, he established the images that had already existed and that he had brought forth in thanksgiving and glorification. Then he arranged the abode of those he had brought forth by way of glorification, which is called paradise, enjoyment, delight full of nourishment, and delight of the pre-existent ones, reproducing the image of all the good things that exist in the fullness. Then he arranged the kingdom, which is like a city filled with everything that is agreeable, brotherly love, and great generosity, and which was filled with the Holy Spirit and the strong powers that govern those the Word had brought forth, and thereby was established with strength. Then he arranged the station of the church that is assembled in this place, and possessed the form of the church that exists among the aeons that give glory to the Father. After that, he arranged the station of the faith and the obedience that arise from hope, the very things the Word had received when the light was revealed, and then the disposition of prayer and supplication leading to forgiveness, and the word about him who will be revealed. All these spiritual stations are set apart by a spiritual power from those who belong to the remembrance, a power that consists of an image of what separates the Word from the fullness. The power is active in making them prophesy about the things to come, and it lets those who have come into being, belonging to the remembrance, the pre-existent ones, without allowing them to mingle with those who had come into being through a vision of the figures before him. The two lower orders. Now, although those who belong to the remembrance, which is excluded from this, are subordinate, they still reproduce the likeness of what belongs to the fullness, and in particular because of their sharing in the names with which they are adorned. Subordinate to those who belong to the remembrance is conversion, and also the law of judgment, which is condemnation and rage, is subordinate to them. Subordinate to these, again, is the power separating those who are below them, which throws them far off and does not allow them to spread upward to those who belong to the remembrance and the conversion. This power is fear and despair, oblivion, confusion, and ignorance. Even these inferior ones, who have come into being as an imitation for an illusion, are called by the higher names, although they have no knowledge about the ones from whom they have issued through a presumptuous thought, lust for dominion, disobedience, and falsehood. To each of the two orders, moreover, he gave a name. Those who belong to the remembrance and the likeness are called those on the right, physical, fires, and the middle ones, while those who belong to the presumptuous thought and the imitation are called those on the left, material, darknesses, and the last ones. After having established each one in his rank, the images, the likenesses, and the imitations, the Word kept the aeon of the images pure from all its adversaries as a place of joy. To those who belonged to the remembrance, however, he revealed the thought of which he had stripped himself, with the intention that it should draw them into a communion with the material. This was in order to provide them with a structure and a dwelling place, but also in order that by being drawn toward evil, they should acquire a weak basis for their existence, so that, instead of rejoicing unduly in the glory of their own environment, and thereby remaining exiled, they might rather perceive the sickness they were suffering from, and so acquire a consistent longing and seeking after the one who is able to heal them from this weakness. Over those who belong to the imitation, on the other hand, he placed the ordering word to provide them with form. He also placed over them the law of judgment, and further, he also placed over them the powers that had their roots in the lust for dominion. He placed them to rule over them so that the order should be kept in check, either by the firmness of the wise word, by the thread of the law, or by the power of the lust for dominion, all of which diminished that order's evilness, until the word was content with them as useful for the economy. The hierarchy of the cosmic powers. The word knows that the two orders share a common lust for dominion, and he granted the desire of both these and all the others. To each he gave an appropriate rank for the exercise of command, so that each would become the ruler of one station and activity, and renounce the place of whoever is superior to himself, in order to command by his activity the inferior stations, being in charge of the activity that it befell him to control on account of his mode of being. Thus there came to be commanders and subordinates, in positions of dominion and servitude, angels and archangels, with a variety of different kinds of activities, each of the rulers with the category and the grade that came to be his lot in accordance with the way they had appeared, took his position, having been given his charge in the economy. And so none of them is without a command, and none is without a king above him, from the ends of the heavens to the ends of the earth, as far as the inhabited regions of the earth, and those who are below the earth. There are kings and there are masters, as well as those whom they command. Some are there to punish, others to give judgment, some to give relief and healing, others to instruct, and still others to keep watch. The ruler and the demiurge. Over all these rulers, he placed one ruler who is commanded by no one, since he is the Lord of them all. This is the representation that the Word brought forth from his thought, as a likeness of the Father of the all. Because of that, he is adorned with every name, being a likeness of him, possessing all the qualities and all the glories. For he too is called Father, God, Creator, King, Judge, Place, Dwelling, and Law. The Word made use of him like a hand to order and work on the things below, and he used him like a mouth to say the things that should be prophesied. When he saw that the things he said and worked on were great, good, and marvelous, he rejoiced and was happy, as if he was the one who had spoken and had done these things by his own thoughts. For he was ignorant that the movement within him came from the Spirit that moved him in a predetermined way toward what it wanted. The psychical realm, the things that came into being from him, he spoke, and they came to be after the likeness of the spiritual stations we have discussed earlier in this section about the images. For he not only worked on, but he himself also produced in his capacity of father his own economy and seeds. This took place, however, through the superior spirit that descended through him to the lower stations. And not only did he speak spiritual words as if they were his own, invisibly through the Spirit that called out and produced things that were greater than his own nature. For since he was by nature a God and a Father, and all the rest of such honorable titles, he thought that they were sprung from his own nature. He established rest for those who obeyed him, but the disobedient he sentenced to punishments. With him is also a paradise and a kingdom and everything else that exists in the aeon before him, although those things stand above these imprints because of the thought with which the latter are joined and which acts like a shadow or a veil, so that he does not see what the nature of the existing things really is. He set up for himself laborers and servants to assist him in the things he would do or say. For in every place where he worked, he left his handsome figure by means of his name, while he worked and spoke the things he was thinking. He set up in his stations images of the light that had been revealed, and of the spiritual places, images deriving from his own nature. As a result, the stations were everywhere adorned by him, stamped with the figure of the one who had put them in place. And so they were established, paradises, kingdoms, rests, promises, and multitudes of servants to do his will. Though they are lords with dominion, they are all placed under the one who is Lord and has appointed them. The organization of the material realm. After thus having listened to it well, he placed the lights that constitute the starting point of the structure over the organization of the things below. The invisible spirit moved him in such a way that he too desired to administer an economy by means of a servant of his own, one that he could also make use of like a hand and a mouth, and as if he had a face. What he brought forth were order, threats, and fear, so that those who had been acting without instruction should hold the position they had been assigned to, keep being fettered to their places by the chains of the rulers who are over them. The whole constitution of matter is divided into three parts. The first powers, which the spiritual word brought forth by illusion and presumption, he placed in the first spiritual rank. The ones that these brought forth, moreover, through lust for dominion, he placed in the middle region, since they, then, were powers of lust for dominion, so that they might rule and command the establishment under them with compulsion and violence. Those finally who had come into being from envy and jealousy, and all the other progeny from this kind of disposition, he placed as a servant order controlling the last things, and commanding all existing things and all procreation. From these derive the diseases that instantly destroy, and they are also impatient to procreate, although their existence is nothing in the place they have issued from, and to which they will once more return. Because of that, he placed over them commanding powers that continuously work on matter to ensure that the offspring that come into being may also have durability, for this is their glory. All right, so even though I'm doing this reading in 4 parts in this actual book that I'm reading from, there's 2 parts. But since I couldn't read it in 2 parts, I broke it up into 4. So this is the official start of part 2 in the Tripartite Tractate. Humanity. What then is the form of fluid matter? A cause which is the blindness that derives from the powers, in it all of them, as they procreate together with them and perish. The thought placed between those on the right and those on the left is a power of simulation, so that all the things that the desire to do with the result that they bring them forth, in the same way that a shadow is projected by a body it follows. These are the roots of the visible creations. The creation of the human. Now, the whole establishment and organization of the images, likenesses, and imitations has come into being for the sake of those who need nourishment, instruction, and form, so that their smallness may gradually grow, as though the instruction provided by the image of a mirror. That, in fact, is why he created the human last, after having prepared and provided for him the things that he created for his sake. The creation of the human happened in the same way as everything else. The spiritual word set it invisibly going, accomplishing it by means of the demiurge and his subservient angels, who were joined in their modeling by the presumptuous thought and its rulers. Thus, the human became like an earthly shadow, so that he would be of the same kind as those who are cut off from the members of the all, and a creature made by them all, the ones on the right as well as the ones on the left, each of the orders forming the human just as it itself was. For the form that the Word brought forth was deficient, in such a way that he was afflicted by sickness. It did not resemble him, for he brought him forth into oblivion, ignorance, and all the other sicknesses, having given him only the first form. Now the Word gave him something through the demiurge without his knowledge, to let him know that there exists something higher, and realize that he needed it. This is what the prophet called the breath of life, Hua, and of the superior aeon, and this is the living soul that gave life to the substance that was dead at first. For that which is dead is ignorance. We must therefore conclude that the soul of the first human derives from the spiritual word, even if the Creator thought that it was his, because that which was breathed went through him as through a mouth. The Creator himself also sent down souls out of his own substance, since he too has the ability to procreate, being derived from the likeness of the Father. And those on the left as well produced a sort of human being of their own, since they possess the imitation. This spiritual substance is one and a single image. Its sickness is the condition, form. As for the substance of those who are psychical, its condition is double, because it has an understanding of what is superior and confesses it, but it is also inclined toward evil on account of the inclination of the presumptuous thought. And as far as the material substance is concerned, its impulses are diverse and take many forms. It was a sickness that assumed many kinds of inclinations. The first human, then, is a mixed molding and a mixed creation, and a depository of those on the left and those on the right, as well as of a spiritual word. And his sentiments are divided between each of the two substances to which he owes his existence. Paradise and the transgression of the first human. Because of this, it is also said that a paradise was planted for him, that he might eat from the fruit of 3 kinds of trees. It was a garden of the threefold order, and one that provides pleasures. The noble and distinctive substance in him was much superior to the creation, and was a blow to them. For that reason, they issued a commandment threatening him, and they brought over him great danger, death. Only the food of the bad trees did he allow him to eat and enjoy, whereas from that tree which had the double character he was not allowed to eat, and much less from that of life, in order that he might not acquire an honor equal to themselves, and also so that he should not them. Through the evil power called the serpent, for he is more crafty than all other evil powers, the human was deceived by a decision of those who belong to the remembrance and the desires. It made him transgress the commandment so that he should die, and he was expelled from that place and all its pleasures. This is the expulsion they made him suffer when he was expelled from the pleasures of those who belong to the imitation and those who belong to the likeness. It is, however, a work of providence, in order that it may be realized that the enjoyment the human being may have for such pleasures is short compared with the eternal existence of the place of rest. It was a work the Spirit had ordained, because it had planned in advance that the human should experience that great evil which is death, that is, the complete ignorance of all things, and also experience all the evils that arise from that, so that he, after the cravings and anxieties that result from these, might partake of the greatest good, namely, eternal life, which is the complete knowledge of the all and the partaking of all good things. Because of the transgression of the first human, death reigned. It accompanied all humans in order to kill them as long as its rule remained, which is possessed and was given for a kingdom because of the economy of the Father's will, of which we have spoken before. Confusion in the world, errors of Greeks and barbarians. Whenever the two orders, those on the right and those on the left, are brought together by means of that thought which lies between them and gives them a common economy, it comes to pass that both of them perform their works with the same zeal, those on the right copying those on the left, and those on the left also copying those on the right. Sometimes the evil order begins, in a foolish fashion, to work some evil, and the wise order emulates it in the shape of a malefactor, it too doing evil as if it were a power of evil. At other times, the wise order sets out to do good, and the foolish order emulates it so as to do the same. This is how it is with the things that are constituted in this way by such deeds. They have come into being resembling things that are dissimilar, so that it has become impossible for the uninstructed to understand the cause of the things that exist. Because of that, they have put forward different explanations. Some say that the existing things exist by providence. These are the ones who observe the regularity of the movement of the creation and its reliability. Others say that it is something alien. These are the ones who observe the diversity and the lawlessness of the powers and its evil character. Others again say that the existing things are what are destined to be. These are the ones who have occupied themselves with this matter. Others yet again say that it is in accordance with nature, and still others say that it is accidental. The great majority, however, have only reached as far as the visible elements and know of nothing more than these. Those who have become wise among the Greeks and the barbarians have reached as far as the powers that came into being from illusion and a vain thought, as well as those who issued from these in turn by way of strife and in the manner of rebellion, and those powers have worked in them. Thus, when they spoke about the things they held to be wisdom, it was imitation, presumption, and illusory ideas, for the imitation had deceived them. They thought that they had reached the truth, though it was error they had reached. This was not only because the names they were using were small, but the powers themselves prevented them by giving the impression that they were the all. From this, it happened that this order was entangled in a struggle against itself, because of the presumptuous quarrelsomeness of the ruler who is before him. For this reason, nobody agreed with anybody else about anything, either in philosophy, medicine, rhetoric, music, or mechanics. But these are all opinions and theories. Consequently, verbosity ruled and they were confused, since they were at a loss to explain those who ruled and gave them their ideas. The insights of the Hebrews. With regard to the things that have arisen from the people of the Hebrews, the scriptures, from the material powers, whose model the Greeks reproduce, everything they thought so as to speak it, the powers on the right, who moved them all to think by means of words and a likeness of themselves. So they set out to reach the truth and used the mixed powers that were working in them. After that, they reached the order of the unmixed powers, before they reached the single one who is set up after the likeness of the Father. He is not invisible in his nature, but is veiled in wisdom, so as to reproduce the type of the truly invisible one. Because of that, many angels have not attained a vision of him, nor have the humans of the Hebrew people, of whom we have spoken, that is, the righteous and the prophets. They thought nothing and said nothing that came from illusion or imitation, or from an obscure thought, but from the power that was working in him. And being attentive to what he saw and heard, each one of them spoke faithfully, with mutual harmony, and concord after the manner of the ones who were working in them, because they preserved their unity and mutual harmony. This happened especially because they confused that which was superior to themselves, and that something greater than themselves existed and had been established because they needed it. The spiritual word had produced this with them as something that was in need of that which is superior, as a hope and anticipation deriving from remembrance. This is the seed of salvation and an illuminating word, which is the remembrance, and its offspring and its emissions are the righteous and the prophets we have been speaking about. They preserve the confession and the testimony of their fathers concerning that which is great, those who came into being with an anticipation of hope and with attentiveness, and in whom was sown the seed of the prayer and seeking, which is sown in many who have sought after confirmation. It manifests itself and leads them to love that which is higher, so as to proclaim these things as being about the one and the same. A single influence was working in them when they spoke. What they saw and spoke varied, however, because there were many who gave them their visions in their speech. Therefore, those who have listened to what has been said do not discard any of it, but have received the scriptures differently in their interpretations. They have set up many sects that remain even until now among the Jews. Some say that the God who made a proclamation in the ancient scriptures is one. Others say that they are many. Some say that God is simple, and that he was of a single mind as to his nature. Others say that his actions embrace the principles of both good and evil. Some again say that he is the maker of the things that have come into being, whereas others say that he made them through his angels. I will leave it there. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I'm so interested to know, and thank you for listening.